Thank you, everyone. Glad you're here. Just a brief legal disclaimer. We do want to just recognize that we cannot provide any personalized information. I know sometimes there are questions that get really specific, and please know that those would need to be handled in a one-on-one basis, and we highly encourage you all to connect with the benefits coordinator to have a really specific conversation because that counseling is really important to do. This information is intended to just be kind of high-level overview information. Today's session will be, after we get through our intros and our kind of foundational information, we'll spend the bulk of the time on SSI and SSDI, and we'll wrap up at the end with some Q&A. We want to launch a poll to find out who all is here today. Lisa is going to have that pop up on your screen. But this first question is just to ask who's here? Service and support administrator, county board staff, family member, person living with a disability, provider, opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities, Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, or another role. And if you are an other role, please feel free to tell us what that might be in the chat box.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, you guys are quick on this one. We had enough options that they pretty much get everything answered, so I'm just watching for it to slow down a bit. I love it. We've got some folks that are letting us know that they're here from Social Security, which is great. Thank you for that. We also have OACB folks. We have somebody who's both SSA and family member. Love that. SSA manager, a mother of a client that receives SSI. So we have lots of great people here. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share with you so you know who's in the audience with you. So you can see that today we have about 66% of the folks are service and support administrators, and then another 13% from county boards, which are not SSAs. But we also have family members. We also have some people living with disabilities. We have lots of providers today on the call. I like that. 11% providers. We have some folks from the Department of DD, and then of course lots of dual members in the chat box. So, all right, I'm going to stop sharing that poll. Thanks so much. All
Okay, if
right.
you are new to Fear Factor, we want to give you a little context. So, Fear Factor stands for Facts, Evaluation, Action, and Results, with this idea being that we do not want people to be held back on pursuing employment opportunities because of fears. We want to provide you information, let you then set a plan in motion to move forward with any employment endeavors that might be made available. So, the purpose is to provide enough information to those service support administrators, providers, job seekers, family members, any other support members, so that you can figure out how to face those fears around benefits and working and move forward with the facts and confidence that you need to pursue that employment. We do have all of our episodes recorded. So if you head to that Padlet that I dropped in the chat, I'll drop it again. You can binge watch all of the episodes. We know that there are some diehard fans out there and we appreciate you. I know for sure that I need to hear this information multiple times. So please know you are welcome to watch that again. Share the episodes, make sure that others are informed. We've covered a wide variety of topics, including stable accounts, Medicaid, ticket to work, Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities, reporting requirements, all kinds of topics. So, and we're always expanding. Would love to hear your feedback about what you want to hear and learn more about. So check that out and continue to plug in for future episodes. Next up, we are going to launch another poll. We want to get a sense of where you are as you go into this session. What is your current level of understanding about SSDI and SSI? So your options here are none, limited, enough to be dangerous, or expert. And if you're an expert, we love to grow our resources here on the Fear Factor group. So,
And I did put the second one right in the same
oh,
one, so we wouldn't have to
perfect.
reshare. So,
Okay, the second question then, if you've answered that first one, is how confident are you in understanding the difference between Medicaid and Medicare? Which your answers there are not at all confident, somewhat confident, confident, and extremely confident. So answers are flying in.
yeah, we're getting all kinds of folks. I can guarantee you, I'm not. I would be in that. I think limited, and I am literally been in this fear factor for how many years now? So, like, but I just can't retain it. I don't understand. Nate, did you want to say something while we're waiting for the poll?
Super basic. We may want to refer to the agency as the Social Security Administration and People Service and Support Administrator as Service and Support Administrator because the acronyms are the same.
Oh, thank you so much. You're right.
Good
There's nothing
point.
like we really messed that up when DODD
Hey,
and
you
and
stole my thunder, buddy. That was going to be my intro.
Oh my goodness, I love it. All right. Well, you can still do it, Teresa. We know it was really yours. All right. I'm going to go ahead and share out the results for you so you know in the crowd. It looks like a lot of people share my feeling of limited knowledge around SSDI and SSI. 75% of the folks answered the way I would have answered. And enough to be dangerous is probably the other one that I think probably is very common. As far as the difference between Medicaid and Medicare, although we're not going to go into a lot of detail on that today, they always kind of both come up. So you can see that that is a little bit more evenly. We have had some sessions on that, and we'll continue to have more sessions on that after today's. So 44% of you said somewhat confident. And we do have 7% that are extremely confident in that area, as well as 2% regarding the difference between SSI and SSDI. So, all right, I'm going to stop sharing that so we can keep moving.
All right. We are very lucky to have our guest speakers here today. Teresa Busher and Kelly Dragoo are here from Social Security Administration, and we're so grateful that we will pass the reins over to them in just a moment. We do want to just let you know that with all of our Fear Factor episodes, there's a ton of work that happens behind the scenes. And so want to just shout out to the rest of what we call the production team, who often are presenting on other topics. So they are among you today. So thank you to all of those who are part of the planning of this amazing Fear Factor team. And with that, we're going to pass it off on with the show. Stop
Thanks so much,
sharing.
Ann.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Fear
thank you.
Factor friends. We appreciate it. So at this point, our Fear Factor panel, our behind the scenes team, you guys can go ahead and stop your cameras if that's okay. Because I think that way we'll highlight Kelly and I here in a moment as we're doing our presenting. And just welcome again, all of you. We're so thrilled to have you on this. And what a day, right? We're all going to remember, I feel like it was the snowy day when I heard Social Security, you know? And so Kelly and I, as public affairs specialists, we're the communication officers for the Social Security offices in Central and Southern Ohio. We just want to welcome all of you again, along with our Fear Factor hosts. Thank you for having us today. Honestly, we love to say that, like, our county boards, you are our people. You really are. We know a lot of you on this call, and we have two of our Social Security Public Affairs colleagues in the background with us today. Aaron Thompson from the greater Toledo area and Brandon Smith in the Cleveland area. Our colleague Robert Fenn, who covers kind of Akron, Canton, Youngstown, is not on with us today, but sends his best. And so you kind of have a whole little group of us. All right. Now, Kelly and I are going to do the presenting today, but just understand that we do have our background team here trying to make sure that we do questions again in the Q&A box. Now, Kelly and I like to say when we talk with our county boards that we live dangerously with you because you have our emails. If you see the slides, we gave you a PDF of all the slides. And we know how this goes. We're throwing a lot at you today. I'm not going to lie, you guys. We're going to present like a solid hour, okay? And it's just like boom, 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 boom. And Kelly's going to show you here in a minute, like kind of our agenda. All right, but we always say before we jump in, we have to give our own little disclaimer, like Fear Factor. You know, things can change. I mean, you guys understand. Some of you may save our PDF on your drive or whatever. That's good. That's okay with us. We just want you to understand that it's accurate as of now. Things can change. You know, you always want to go online to try and update things. And the reason that we are making sure you've got our emails is so that if it's personal info, guys, we want to keep things light, even with Q&A box, don't we? Keep it light. All right. Anything that's really burning, we don't want you to worry about. You always got us offline. Now, Kelly and I are not going to be able to do your applications or the appeals for your clients because, like Brandon and Aaron, all of us that do public affairs and outreach, we work for all the offices and we're considered media liaisons also. So we aren't in there like pushing all the techie buttons, but we're here for you in the background. All right. So if you don't get what you need out of our session or you got to follow up today, email Kelly or I. We always say, listen, you guys, you got to give us like a week. If you don't hear from us within 2 weeks, bug us again. All right. With an email, but give us a little time to get back with you. So that way we don't want you to be freaked out about getting all questions answered. You've got Q&A box, but you may just want to chill for a moment because I'm going to hand the reins over to Kelly here in 1 second, but we're going to talk about like contacting us first and then like diving in, like, what do we mean by disability? Because you have a very specific disability definition with county board services, and it's different from ours. So we're going to talk about that. And then SSDI versus SSI, and also navigating the application process. So we kind of don't want you to get too ahead of things. So it's like, you might be like, well, when are they going to talk about applications? That's coming. What, so again, we're just kind of building on things. So you might just want to exhale. If something's burning, throw it in the Q&A box, or if it's burning, go ahead. Otherwise, you've got us in the background. Remember, SSA for us, like Nathan said, Social Security. Look, we even share acronyms. That's how close we all are. SSA, Social Security Administration. We talk about the DDS, meaning Disability Determination Services. Some more on that in a bit. Let me turn things over to my dearest Kelly.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Teresa. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, let me start off with talking about contacting Social Security. We feel like that's very important that people need to know. We always want people to go online if they can. That's going to be your first method of contacting Social Security these days. Our website is ssa.gov or socialsecurity.gov. It's at the bottom of every slide as we go along here. Just make sure you're always hitting .gov after Social Security or SSA, never the .com lookalike website that's out there. If you're not able to do what you want to do online, or you simply don't want to or can't, call our national toll-free number, 1-800-772-1213. Monday through Friday, we have staff that answers that phone line 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. But there are also 24-hour-a-day automated phone services on that phone number as well. So there is an AI bot on there that when you call, it's going to ask you why you're calling. And one of the things that you're calling about might be something you don't have to wait to talk to an actual live person or a human. So if you're just calling for claim status or benefit verification, maybe requesting a Medicare card or changing your address if you get a Social Security benefit, those types of functions you can do without ever speaking to a human on that call. So you'll want to follow through with the AI bot that walks you through those processes and gets you off the phone a lot quicker. A lot of that, however, you can do online. So using the website, also do that there. Local offices are open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We do have a locator website that lets you find local offices if you're not sure where they are. But please know that appointments are required for almost all services in the local field offices now. So this changed about a year ago, and staffing is low. In order to make sure everybody is served timely and efficiently, we really need to schedule appointments. So please call ahead to schedule an appointment before you just walk in to have some kind of service with Social Security, especially if you want to file for a benefit. Now, what will happen is if you do walk in without an appointment, Social Security will do some triage with you to figure out what you need and whether or not that is something they consider to be a dire need or an immediate service. So there are some times that they'll be able to see you right away. Most of the time, however, be prepared for them to schedule you an appointment for a future day. So I mentioned if you go online that you can do a lot of business with Social Security these days, and you do that because you have a My Social Security account. So we want people to be able to create their My Social Security accounts so that when they are ready to do business with us online, like file for a benefit or request a replacement Social Security card or change your address, anything along those lines, we're going to want you to be digitally identified online. And we do that through what's called the My Social Security account. So there's about 200 people on this call today, and hopefully all 200 of you have a My Social Security account already. If not, please consider doing that. If you have one, you can help your family, you can help your clients create one as the need presents. You can do a lot of things with your My Social Security account. If you don't get any benefits at all, you might think, well, I don't need one of those. Well, you will want one if you want to check out what your retirement estimates are going to be, or what kind of money you would get from Social Security should you become disabled. What if you want to check the application status because you have recently filed a claim? Or what if you want to replace your Social Security card? Maybe it's old and torn and tattered, or you haven't seen it in years. You can do that online if you have a My Social Security account. Once you get benefits, then you can use that account to manage the benefits that you get, like update your direct deposit or send documents to us through the internet. Print off proof of the benefits that you get. This is a huge one. We have people that call us and wait weeks to get these in the mail or schedule appointments to come in to get one. They can print these themselves through their My Social Security account. So we want people to be familiar with that. Again, you do have to get digitally identified when you create an account. So there is a process involved with having an email address, selecting a password, verifying your identity and all of that. But once you have that completed, you're able to use this My Social Security account. And if you should become a representative payee, or if you know of somebody who is a representative payee for somebody who gets benefits from Social Security, whether it's SSI or a Social Security benefit, they can use their own My Social Security account to access the information of that person who's getting the benefits from Social Security. So if I am the payee for Teresa who gets a benefit, I can go get proof of her benefits through my own personal My Social Security account. So having this account, even if you're just the payee for somebody, is something valuable to you to be able to use our online services and save yourself some time. So you'll notice at the bottom of our slides, we do have some links along the way to help you find a little bit more information about what we're talking about. You know, if we went into total detail with everything, we'd be here for hours. So we try to reduce it as much as we can. All right, with some of that behind us, let's move into the actual disability programs, the definition of disability, and then I'm going to talk about SSI. I'm going to stop after SSI and hand things over to Teresa, and she'll talk about SSDI and a little bit about work activities at the end, and also the application and disability determination process. So let's start out with what programs do we offer at Social Security, and what's the definition of disability here? So under the Social Security Act, Social Security administers two different disability programs. There's Title II and there's Title 16. Title II is the SSDI program, or Social Security Disability Insurance. Notice it has the word insurance in its name because it is earned through work. You work, you pay taxes on your wages, and you earn insurance or an insured status to become eligible for a benefit one day. This is like your retirement money, your survivor benefits you leave behind for your family, and also the Social Security disability insurance benefit. This is also Medicare. So one day when you get old enough for Medicare, you become insured for it because you worked and paid taxes on your wages, or you've become disabled and after a period of time, you can also get Medicare. So that's the Title II program of the Social Security Act. Title 16 of the Social Security Act is very different. So that's what's in the reddish orange bubble here. That is the SSI program, Supplemental Security Income. You notice the word insurance is not in this acronym. It's Supplemental Security Income. This is a benefit for people with limited to no income, limited to no resources. They don't have to have a work history of any kind. So you do see children get this benefit. And we also look at a living arrangement of somebody in order to get SSI. So people apply for this when they have a disabling condition that's keeping them from work, but maybe they don't have enough work credits to qualify for the SSDI benefit that is based on their work. So SSI is very different, but it is a needs-based benefit. So we are looking at a person's income and resources rather than their work history to see if they are eligible for this benefit. And because it's needs-based, it goes along with the Medicaid program. The rules are very similar to Medicaid. So once we find somebody eligible for SSI in Ohio, we do a data share with the local Job and Family Services, who then starts the Medicaid benefit. So that's just a broad overview of the two disability programs that people can apply for at Social Security. In order to be found to be disabled and receive one of those benefits, somebody has to meet the definition of a disabled individual at Social Security. So we look at, is the person an adult or a child who is applying for the benefit, because that helps us determine which definition of disability are we actually looking at here. So for adults, that's everybody 18 or older, the definition of being disabled under Social Security's rules is the same, whether you're applying for SSI or SSDI, Title II or Title 16. And that is that you have a medical condition or a combination of various impairments that prevent you from working and doing what we call substantial gainful activity for at least 12 months, or your condition is expected to result in your death. So there is no temporary decision of disability and there's no partial definition of disability. You're either unable to work and earn substantial gainful activity for at least a year, or your condition is resulting in death. Now, what is substantial gainful activity? It's work. So it's a level of work. It's a monetary amount that we use to determine if somebody is working, whether the income they're getting from that work is considered substantial and gainful. So it's basically a threshold that if you work and you earn above that threshold, you make too much money to be considered to be disabled. You don't meet the definition of disability, because remember, the definition says you have impairments that prevent you from doing substantial gainful activity. So in 2026, substantial gainful activity is $1,690 or more in gross wages. If someone is blind, they have a higher level of substantial gainful activity. That's $2,830 per month in gross earnings. If you make more than that and you are applying for a disability benefit, SSI or SSDI, we may or may not be able to take that claim because your income on the surface looks to be above substantial gainful activity. Now, we talk about work incentives and employment supports later on that take this into account. So this is where those work incentives come into play, of whether or not the actual value of your earnings is substantial gainful activity, or could we reduce it? So we'll get to that way later, but we just want you to know that. If you are 65 or older and applying for SSI because you have limited income and limited resources, we don't have to make a disability decision for you. So for somebody to get SSI as an aged individual, they just have to be 65 plus. We will not be making medical decisions for people of that age or older. Now, when we talk about children, we tweak this disability determination or definition a little bit, because we're talking about children. We're talking about, are they learning and functioning and growing like other children their age who don't have impairments, rather than can they go to work with the type of impairment that they have. So for a child to be found to be disabled, they have to have a medically determinable impairment that causes marked and severe functional limitations in at least two of the domains of functioning that you see on the screen. Their conditions still have to be expected to last at least a year, and or their condition is resulting in death. We also still look at whether or not they work, and if they do work, we will look at, are they earning above substantial gainful activity or not? So it still factors in, but in order to be found to be disabled, again, we're looking more at, is the child learning and functioning and growing and reaching certain milestones that other children are that don't have the disabling conditions. And you can find out more about that in the link that we have on this slide. So that'll go into more depth about what those domains of functioning are and what Social Security is looking at. Just a quick comparison slide for you. We like to do this side by side so that you can see again what the differences are between SSDI and SSI. They really are very different programs. So SSDI is on the left, SSI is on your right, and we'll just go down and look side by side. So with SSDI, there is retroactivity for up to a year, but for SSI, there is not. So the application date is very important when somebody applies for disability, whichever program. We may be able to pay somebody in the past if we find them to be disabled in the past for the SSDI benefit, but we will not do that for SSI. It's just from the application date forward. There are dependent benefits possibly payable if somebody is approved for SSDI, and that again is based on your work history. Your children, your spouses, your ex-spouses may be eligible for additional monthly benefits off of your work history under Social Security if you get SSDI. But we do not do that for people who get SSI. There are no dependent benefits payable. We pay people at different times of the month. So SSDI folks get paid usually on Wednesdays, whereas SSI people get their benefit on the first of each month. So that helps you decide what kind of benefit somebody's getting. If they tell you that they get paid on the first, but they swear up and down they're getting SSDI, they are not. We only pay SSI on the first. The second row, benefit amount for SSDI is based on a person's earnings. So your benefit is different than my benefit. It's all based on our work history before we become disabled. But SSI is based on what we call a federal benefit rate or an F.E.A.R, not your work history. Now, the maximum somebody can get in 2026 is $994 a month. Some people collect all of that each month. Some people only collect a portion of that. But we'll go into why we decrease that amount as I talk about SSI. So that's the maximum amount somebody can get. But SSDI, somebody could get $2,500 a month, or they might get $300 a month. It depends on their work history. The third row down, again, SSDI is insurance that somebody earns by paying FICA taxes on their work history. FICA stands for Federal Insurance Contribution Act. That's the Social Security payroll tax. However, SSI is not insurance. It is not based on any work history, so you don't have to have one. It is funded by the general tax revenues instead. It is not based on work history. In the fourth row, eligibility for SSDI is based on having enough work credits that you've earned in your working career. Whereas SSI, eligibility and payment amount is based on being found to be disabled, as well as, or having your limited income, limited resources, and your living situation. And then with SSDI, you end up with Medicare after a 2-year wait period, whereas SSI, you end up with Medicaid eligibility. And there is not a waiting period for the Medicaid like there is the Medicare. Now, again, the Medicare and the Medicaid acronyms are so similar, it makes it complicated to understand the differences, but Medicaid goes along with SSI. Medicare goes along with your earned benefits, your insurance benefits. Now, let's talk SSI specifically, and then I'll hand it over to Teresa to go into the SSDI information. So who's even eligible for SSI? Well, individuals who have limited income and limited resources. And we don't give you a nice, easy number for that. We always just kind of say limited because it varies on how many people live in the household, whether somebody's a child or an adult, what kind of income they have, if it's earned or unearned, if they're married, do they have a spouse living in the household? All of these things factor into what is considered limited income and limited resources. So there are thresholds, but we can't give you a nice, neat number on that exactly. But you do have to have limited income, limited resources. You either have to be 65 or older, or you have to be blind, or you have to meet Social Security's definition of disability, whether it's as a child or as an adult. Also, you have to be a U.S. citizen. in most cases. There are some non-citizens that can get SSI, but they have to have very certain alien classifications by DHS. There's a lot of rules there. So usually a US citizen, but sometimes non-citizens. You do have to live inside the United States. You can't be absent from the United States for at least 30 consecutive days. If you are, we will stop the benefit. And you can't be confined to an institution like living in a hospital or living in prison or jail. So there are some living arrangement rules with SSI that determine where you live and what kind of living situation that you have. So speaking of that, I've kind of given you a broad overview of that we talk about limited income, limited resources, and living situations. That's basically how we like to think of the eligibility for SSI, that it's a three-legged stool. Again, it's not based on your work history. You don't see work as one of those legs. So work is not factored in. We have to find you to be disabled if you're under 65 and not blind. And we also have to find that you have limited income, limited resources, and that you live somewhere that we can actually pay you SSI. So let's look at each one of these legs. Income, this is the easiest one. So we are going to look at a person who is applying for SSI. We're going to look at their income. Where's it coming from? What type of income do they have? Are they a child or are they an adult? Do they live with their parents if they're a child? Or if they're an adult, are they married? Are they living with their spouse? So we're going to factor all these things in and look at the type of income somebody gets, or their parents get, or the spouses get of the applicant, so that we can determine how much of that income that comes into that household monthly is countable towards how much somebody can then receive in SSI payments. So we're going to look at a person's earned wages, their net earnings from self-employment. We're also going to look at their unearned types of income. Maybe they get a Social Security benefit or a veteran's benefit, an unemployment benefit. Perhaps they have pension income coming in or interest income from some big bank account. Or maybe somebody is nice enough to have family, or has a nice enough family member or friend that gives them money every month to sustain them, pay their rent, buy their food, pay for shelter and utility bills and things like that. Those are all types of income that are countable for the SSI program. Remember I said that the maximum somebody can get is $994 a month? Well, income can decrease how much of that $994 a person receives each month. So if you see somebody getting less than $994, they could have income that we are looking at and decreasing a person's SSI monthly benefit. We also look at the resources that they own. So again, we're looking at not only the applicant, but if it's a child, we're looking at that applicant child's parents who live in the household. If it's an adult who's applying for SSI, we're looking at, do they have a spouse that lives in the household that also has resources? So what type of resources are we talking about? Well, let's start on the right. We exclude a lot of things from even looking at for somebody applying for SSI. We don't care how much the home is that you live in, if there's a mortgage on the home, et cetera. You're allowed to live somewhere that is your primary residence, and we don't count the value of that. You're also allowed to own a car, one car. Doesn't matter, it could be a Porsche. We don't care what the value is. You can own one car and apply for SSI. It will not make you ineligible based on resources. You can set aside some resources for burial. So sometimes people, move things to a funeral home or a life insurance policy so that it's set aside for burial. We will not let that make you ineligible for SSI. And then there are ABLE accounts. Many of you on the call have probably heard of ABLE accounts. You can learn more about them on www.stableaccount.com. These are investment style accounts that you can put money in if you are a disabled individual up to a certain age, where you can put up to $100,000 in these accounts and it will not make you ineligible for the SSI program. So if you haven't learned about those ABLE accounts yet, we want you to check those out. Now, those are excluded resources. Now look at the other column on the left. Things we will look at that could make somebody ineligible for SSI are money that they have in their bank accounts, stocks and bonds, 401ks. If they own a car, if they own more than one car, we're going to look at the value of these other cars. If somebody owns life insurance that has a cash value while they're living, we're going to look at the value of that. If they own property that's other than where they live. So if somebody owns a piece of land in New Richmond somewhere, that's a piece of property that they don't live on. That is a resource to them. Or a second home in Florida, something along those lines. Now, if you look at the bottom of this slide, you'll see the limits for resources. $2,000 for an individual is all somebody is allowed to have at the first moment of each month on SSI. So when somebody is applying for SSI, if they tell us they have $10,000 in the bank, they're automatically not eligible for SSI. They have too much money in resources. So it has nothing to do with their disabling condition. We're looking at income, resources, and living situation too, remember? So the limits are a little bit different when we talk about children, because it depends on if they live with a parent or two parents. We increase those limits a little bit to allow for the parents to also have resources available to them. And that's because we do something that we call deeming, where some of the income or resources that a parent has or a spouse has can affect the applicant's eligibility. So I'll talk about that in just one more second. I want to expound a little bit on those ABLE accounts for you. ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience Act. And again, these accounts allow people to save money in tax advantage type savings accounts, kind of like college savings accounts. It's limited to people who have a disability and have been disabled since before turning 46. That's new. It used to be like 26, and they've recently increased the age. So that's great. It's allowing for more people to take advantage of these. These accounts are not ones that you walk into your local bank and open up. You do these online. You do these through that www.stableaccount.com website where you can create these accounts. You can save up to $100,000. Family members can put money in these. People can work and add their money to these accounts so that they don't, go over the resource limits in their regular bank accounts and then lose their SSI. The only way to get the money out of the accounts, though, is for the money, the withdrawal to be a qualified expense. So things like paying for your housing or buying a computer, putting a ramp on your home, lots of things can qualify as a qualified expense. But you can't just, take $10 out to go to the movies one night. It's not that type of an account. So again, we wanted to make sure we gave you that information. Back to deeming. So I mentioned that if a child applies for SSI, we're also going to be looking at their parents' income and resources if they live in the same household. So if only one parent lives there and the other parent is absent, we're not going to include the absent parent's income and resources, FYI. So the child, only if they live with their parents do we include the parent's income and resources. So if a child is temporarily away from their home, we're not going to be looking at mom and dad's income or resources. The deeming actually stops when a child turns 18. Why is that? Because at 18, we consider that child an adult. We no longer call them a child. Even if they keep living with their parents, they become an adult for our rules. And so we stop doing the deeming of income and resources to the children. Spouses, we do the same thing. So if you're an adult applying for SSI and you live with your spouse who works and makes $100,000 a year, a portion of their income is deemed towards your eligibility for SSI based on having limited income. A portion of their resources that they own is deemed towards you having limited resources. So again, we can't give you an exact number for each individual, but there are some pretty nice screening tools and a deeming chart that are available online that we want you to go check out. So go look at those, plug in some numbers if you're curious if somebody might be eligible, or if you're a family member wondering if somebody might have eligibility, you can plug in some numbers and see if your child might be ineligible or eligible based on your income, your resources. The third leg of the stool is living arrangements. Now, this one's a little bit more complicated when we talk about how we determine if somebody's eligible for SSI based on where they live. SSI payments can actually vary depending upon a person's living situation. So I mentioned in the very beginning, you have to be living inside the United States, right? So that's one thing. But also, I mentioned that if you live in an institution like a prison or a jail or a hospital, maybe we won't pay you. And that's based on this living arrangement, living situation factor of eligibility for SSI. So we may reduce people's SSI payments when they live in a household of another person and they don't pay their fair share to live there. Like if I live with Teresa, but she doesn't charge me any rent, well, then my SSI is probably going to be reduced because I don't need as much money to pay those bills. I don't have those bills. If I live in my own home and somebody else pays all or part of my living expenses, my SSI will probably be reduced. So maybe I live here in my own home, but my parents are nice enough to pay my mortgage for me. Well, again, then I won't get as much SSI as somebody else who has a mortgage to pay. So SSI will be reduced based on that. If I live in a nursing home or a hospital for a whole month and Medicaid is involved paying for my stay, I'm either going to get no SSI or I might get a little bit of SSI each month, up to $30 a month, just as a basic needs allowance. So it kind of depends on where I'm living on how much SSI I can get. The reason for this is because we attribute something called in-kind support and maintenance, or ISM is what we like to call it. And that equals or is food, shelter, or both that somebody provides to you. So if I live in my own home and Teresa gives me $1,000 a month because she's got a lot of money, and that's income to me, right? So that would be income. If, however, what she did was paid the rent for me, my $1,000 monthly rent, well, now she's paying my shelter expenses. And that is not really income to me, but it is what we call in-kind support and maintenance, or ISM. And we count that as a form of income when we determine a person's SSI amount. And by doing that, it will reduce a person's SSI. So when you see somebody getting less than the maximum SSI, they could either have an income or they could be getting assistance paying their food and shelter expenses. The maximum reduction that we can charge somebody due to income support and maintenance is 1/3 of the current federal benefit rate. So that's about $300 and some odd reduction currently. The SSI maximum federal benefit rate is $9.94. So 1/3 of that would be reduced right away if somebody was paying somebody's shelter expenses. So this is just kind of another example of what I just said. If you live alone and you pay your own shelter expenses, or you live in somebody else's household, but you are paying your fair share to live there, then potentially you could get the full SSI payment. No income support and maintenance is charged to you. But if you live in somebody else's household and you don't pay your shelter expenses, or you live in your own home and somebody pays your shelter expenses for you, then your SSI benefit is likely going to be reduced up to 1/3. And generally, again, people who live in institutions, hospitals, nursing homes, prisons, and jails, they're not eligible for SSI, or they only get a small amount of SSI. Lots of things change when somebody turns 18. So at age 18, we no longer consider somebody on SSI a child. We consider them an adult. So that changes everything, because now we're looking at adult rules instead of child rules. We make a brand new medical determination to determine whether or not that child can keep getting SSI. If they're already getting it as a child, we now have to see, can they get it as an adult? We no longer count the income and the resources of the parents. So remember, if the child was getting SSI and they were considered living in a low income or low resource house, it was because we were also looking at their parents' income and resources. We stopped doing that at age 18. So if you have a child who was not eligible for SSI because they lived with their parents and their parents' income and resources were knocking that child out of eligibility, well, then at age 18, that child should reapply. The month after they turn age 18, we will no longer look at and count mom and dad's income and resources when determining if that child is of a low income, limited resource household. So children who become adults now have adult rules. They also have to sign their own applications. So parents can help them, but children will have to be involved, whether they attest their application over the phone, sign it with an X, or sign their name. Unless they have a legal guardian, they're going to have to be involved in that application. Now, if a child is already getting SSI and they've been getting the maximum amount, but now they've reached adulthood and they are not paying rent to live in the parent's household, what do you think happens to the SSI? The SSI could be reduced now because they're not paying for shelter expenses. So again, those rules change at age 18. All along while somebody is getting SSI, we do what we call redeterminations or reviews. So these are not based on medical conditions, but periodically, once a year, once every year and a half or so, we will do redeterminations of a person's income, resources. All along, a person getting SSI has a right or a responsibility to notify Social Security of any changes that take place in income, resources, and living arrangements. But once a year or so, we will do these redeterminations to make sure that we have everything up to date. If somebody fails to comply with those, we stop the SSI payment. There is a very good book online because we know SSI is very complicated. This book is probably several hundred pages big, but it's online and you can go check it out. And it will give you lots of good information, lots of good examples of things that I just talked about to help you understand SSI quite a bit more. So with that, there's everything you needed to know about SSI. Let me hand it over to Teresa.
Thanks, Kel. I really appreciate it. That was a great background in terms of everything with SSI, but we're going to do a hard pivot and we're going to go into SSDI because for the majority of your clients, if they are over 18, you guys, we're always going to be looking at both. All right. So SSDI is very similar to retirement in that you have to have paid in through FICA work, FICA, the Federal Insurance Contribution Act, otherwise known as the Social Security payroll tax, and you have to have a minimal amount of work in order to qualify. Now, these credits, that's the minimal amount that you have to earn in order to qualify, change every single year. So for 2026, one credit in gross wages is $18.90. That's in your gross, not your net. All right. And your employer matches when you're actually paying the FICA. And you can earn up to 4 of these credits per year. So I know some of you have heard before because, you've heard people say, well, you need 40 credits. Well, that's for your retirement. So again, if 1840 is 1 credit this year and you can earn 4 of these, if you earn this year, 1890, I should say, times 4, is $7,560. If you earn that amount or more in gross Social Security earnings, you got your 4 credits towards your eventual Social Security retirement and Social Security SSDI amount. All right. Now, I just want to mention this because some of you are in Au-pairs. If you're working for county entities, you may not be paying into Social Security, you might be paying into a Medicare portion of the FICA, but not the full FICA amount. So Kelly and I like to tell folks, listen, look in your My Social Security account for yourself because it will show you how many of these credits you guys like at Au-pairs have for your eventual retirement, as well as if you have enough to qualify on disability. Because some of you, if you worked for the county for a long time, if you became disabled, you'd be going with the county, with Au-pairs versus with SSD, wouldn't you? All right. So just a little tidbit to take a look at that for yourself. Now, sometimes our families, your parents will say to you, my kid just basically worked a tiny amount in high school. Isn't it just a sham to kind of look at SSD? And you're like, it doesn't take a lot of work. When they're under 24, you only need 6 of these credits. Basically, that's a year and a half of part-time work, my friends, to qualify potentially for SSD. Okay. Now, 24 to 31, it's kind of on a sliding scale. So they might need a couple years of work, etc. We're going to figure that out. We at Social Security are going to review the application and we're going to talk applications in a minute, but we're going to look for that SSD, all right, to see if they have enough work. And so when you're over 31, you need 20 of these credits in the 10 years before you became disabled. Again, so pretend again, old Teresa here, I become disabled today. We're in 2026, so we're going to go back to 2016. And I need to have worked at least 5 years part-time at this like 7,560 level, whatever, in order to qualify. The amount is not based on need like SSI. It's based on your work, like retirement. Very wealthy people can get SSD. You paid in, and therefore you have a benefit to draw out on. And the My Social Security account is pretty accurate when you're looking for yourself and your own family. So you got a spouse that's in Social Security, even if you're in a PERS, have them take a look at it. All right, because heaven forbid you become disabled, this is pretty on the money as to what you would receive if you are unable to work. Okay, so we're going to look at all adults, all of your families. If they've got a child 18 or older, we're going to look, because it doesn't take a lot of work, does it, to qualify for SSD? Most of you have seen this already. Okay, when you go in and you do an application, again, we're going to see that, we're going to talk about it in a minute. Okay, it's similar to a retirement application if you're filing for disability. We ask you questions in the application about your family, about dependents. So we say, do you have spouses? We ask about marriages. And some of you can back me up, okay? Because I've had parents say, this was so weird. I'm helping my son and he's 18 and they're asking him like adult questions, like, have you ever been married? And we're like, yeah. It's hard for us as parents. It's like, yeah, they're 18. They get adult questions, all right? So it's like, have you been married, and marriage history, because it's potential that your dependents may draw off your SSD. So we look at spouses, but normally you have to be, it's like retirement. A spouse would normally have to be 62 or older, normally, okay? But what about kids? We ask a question. Do you have any minor children who are under 18 or a senior in high school? This is on the application. I mean, me, Teresa, I'm filing for SSD, but I'm asked, do I have a spouse? I give information about my marriage. Then I'm asked if I have kids under 18. Okay, yeah, I have one. Right now, one of the 5 is only under 18. Then the next question is, do I have any kids, 18 or older still in high school? Yeah, I got one. He's a senior. He's 18. He's a senior. Okay. So potentially I have 2 minor children that may draw me. Now I have 3 kids that are out of high school. They would only draw on me if they had a disabling condition before 22. I'm looking at this third little bullet point here. But this is the question that I'm asked. Okay, do I have any minor kids or kids who are adults over 22 with a disabling condition? Now, I might be looking at this and I think, well, I got one kid in high school, fine. And I got one kid that's a senior, fine. Those 2, and what if I've got a 22-year-old and they're living with their dad? And they're staying in his basement. They're not doing anything. And I've been so worried because I feel this child has had a very disabling condition since birth. But I don't know. Should I put him down on my application? Yes, you tell your families. If they are filing for themselves for retirement or for SSD, if they have an adult child 18 or over that is getting services from you, that's a yes. All right. A child with a disabling condition before 22. If they're not sure, if they say, but they're in a group home. That's an adult child over 22 with a condition. That's a yes. They're living with their mom. Yes. We'll make we'll take it from there on our Social Security end. But we have had parents say, I just wasn't really thinking that the kid, I mean, I know my son is 30 and he's getting services from the county board. I just didn't think of him as qualifying on my application. I, the parent, am filling out the application. I'm going to be putting information. Every application for retirement, SSD, asks about these questions. All right. Why? Because you already know, guys, it's potential for our children to draw off of us. This is a way of protecting our minor and our children, our minors and children who have disabilities. So look at the bottom part of our slide here. All right. So I, Teresa, end up getting SSD. Okay. My benefit, let's say, is $2,000 a month. That means in addition to me, and happily I'm alive, alive in this scenario, because sometimes people say, no, you have to be dead. You're like, no, I am alive. I, Teresa, paid in. I'm drawing my own SSD or my own retirement. It's $2,000 a month. That means my children could each draw up to 50%. That's what I'm saying. Then both of my boys I mentioned who are in high school could draw then $1,000 off me. Okay. Now, when they're done and off high school, that benefit's going to stop. There's no college. The only way it's going to go on is if one of them has a disability. All right. So hang on to that thought for a sec. Okay. Now, if I die, then it goes up to 75% of my benefit, not 50% of my benefit. But again, we're intaking this information to potentially pay children off my Social Security work. Okay. So if that situation happens where, say again, I'm on SSD, and I told you, like my senior in high school, let's say, was drawn 50% of my amount. When that child's coming up on 18, the child would get a letter, okay? And it will say, hey, adulthood is 18 for us at Social Security. The only way you're going to draw after age 18 is to verify that you're still in high school. Okay, so look at bullet 2. So this form will come in the month that comes in the mail a couple months before 18 or whatever, and it says, hey, your benefits are they're gonna age out. So you're not gonna be a kid anymore. You're gonna be an adult. And if you're still in school, your benefits can continue until you turn 19 or until you graduate, whichever happens first. All right. So for my son, that would be like he's gonna graduate in May, and maybe he's not 18 till like July, or 19 till July or August, whatever. His benefits will end at graduation. High school graduation, that's when they're on. Again, there's no college for those child benefits off of a parent living or deceased off that parent's Social Security. Now, some of you have seen this form. You can look at these forms online. Kelly and I put all these links in your slides, you guys, so you can go back and, fiddle with them and look at our links. But this form, the 1372 that we send to that 18-year-old, if they're getting Social Security from a parent, it asks, are you disabled? That's really important, because if my child that's in high school is going to be in high school until 22 because he is severe on the spectrum or has developmental delays, etc., then you're gonna check yes on that form, because that's going to set into motion those disabled adult child benefits, meaning that that child of mine is going to receive from my work, my information, maybe for the rest of their life, beyond high school, beyond 18, potentially. Okay. So this particular type of benefit, this disabled adult child benefit, you will see sometimes referred to as a child disability benefit, or a CDB. You guys, it's the same thing. Being in the profession that you're in, working with children who almost all of your kids, you're going to have this, if you stay around the profession long enough, this is bread and butter, right, for a lot of you. And that's guiding families, because most of your families, when the child turns 18, the parents think, Lord willing, the parents are alive, or they're not deceased, and they're not retired yet. They're not on Social Security retirement yet, and they're not on SSD. Now, if they are, when the parent retires or when the parent files their application, look at bullet 3 with me, you guys, here, then that's how we're going to get that information on their adult child. Remember, because I said, finally, I'm retiring, yay. And my son, who's very disabled, maybe he's in supportive housing, whatever, he's in his 30s, but I'm just retiring now. How are you going to know about my son? Because I'm going to have that application, and it's going to ask, do you have a spouse? Do you have minor children? Do you have a child 18 or older with disability? And I'm going to say yes. And that's how we're going to look to see if that child can draw on my record. Again, this is not a benefit that's around if the parents are alive or not on SSD and not on retirement. Now, if they already were, then the child could continue. Like if I died and my child was 16, again, benefits would stop normally at high school graduation, right? But if that child's going to stay in high school till 22 or beyond, those benefits may continue forever, right? Way to protect our children, a disabled adult child benefit. Now, if that child's already on SSI or already had a disability determination, that may be enough. But look at bullet 4 with me. If this is all brand new, if you're just filing, right? If you file for retirement, we've never made a disability decision on your child, then we at Social Security are going to make a disability determination to make sure that child was disabled before 22. You guys understand, if my child becomes disabled at 45, they're not drawing off my work record. They'd be drawn off theirs. All right. So we have to show that that disability became early, pre-22. So again, this is a form, guys, of SSD. It's not need-based. I don't care that you have $1 million in the bank. If you become disabled or when you retire, it's a potential that your child could draw off you. And it doesn't matter if they have money or where they're living. It's not like the SSI stuff that Kelly went over. It is based like retirement on your work and not on me. Okay, so for the last part of our session today, we're going to talk then about like actually doing the application for benefits. Okay, we want you to start online if at all possible. For children under 18, look at our little bullet point here at the bottom. You actually want to do a two-step process. You go online if possible, and then you call to schedule an interview, an appointment. Because with SSI, that three-legged stool, we need to intake non-medical information for that child. Okay, so two-step online call. Now you can always call and just do everything with us on a phone. That's fine. But most of our families are using the online option, right, to file for disability. So we wanted to mention that, let's say your child's 18 and you say, it's time. Your client's 18, it's time. Mom and dad income don't count anymore. We're going to file for SSI. We're going to file for SSD. It's one big application for adults online. But the first page you hit is a doozy because it asks who's completing the application. All right. And sometimes for our parents, will be like, well, let's just say I'm applying for myself here. Okay. Because let's say again, let's say I'm helping my 18-year-old and he's kind of, he knows what's going on, but he's like, what is really happening, Mom? And I'm like, it's okay. I gotcha. I'm just going to fill it out with you. Okay. Well, if you do this, I'm applying for myself. You have to sign in or create a My Social Security account. Now, if you're able to do that for your 18-year-old, and as many of you know, you have a very diverse population that you serve. So you have 18-year-olds that may be semi-nonverbal, but they are flying around online and they can do a My Social Security account like that. Okay, if that 18-year-old is able to do that and actually can sign in to their own My Social Security account because they're an adult, then they can actually electronically sign everything online. It makes it go faster. And there's a question that also asks them about SSI. And you say, are you filing for SSI? And then it helps us set up the SSI application all online. Beautiful. But it can be difficult to set up an account in My Social Security account for an 18-year-old who doesn't have any credit. And maybe, let's just say it just may not be possible for a lot of you. So you're stuck right here. Because if you say I'm applying for myself, you have to sign in to a My Social Security account. Now, can you get around this? You can. If you push this button, I know it's hard to see on your screen, but it says I'm helping someone who isn't with me. And you're like, but they're with me. And I know, but you can at least fill out the information online for that individual. And here's what's going to happen. The same thing that happens if you fill out the I'm helping someone is if we do it on the phone. Okay. Same thing that happens. We'll intake the information from you, but then we're going to send you the actual printed copy of the information you gave us. And that 18-year-old is going to have to sign it, including any medical authorizations that we're going to need. Okay. So let's say again, my son is nonverbal. So I do this online. I can't do My Social Security account. So I do the I'm helping somebody option, or I just do it on the phone with Social Security. And they're like, can your son, if my son could actually like attest verbally, it'd be one thing, but you're like, he can't do that. He's nonverbal. That's okay. We can take the info from you, but we're going to mail you those papers. And that 18-year-old has to sign. And you might be like, he can basically just make a squiggle. A squiggle's okay. You never have to notarize things with us, but you will need some little witness signatures at the bottom. Okay, so no notarization, but people have to witness it. And then you just drop off those forms, or you can mail them back to the local office. We will have that return information on there. But you've got to have us, you got to give us the actual pen and ink is what I want to call it. Because sometimes parents will say, well, can I just like upload it to you? And I'm like, no. Applications, we have to see the original signed copy. So most people just drop it off in a Dropbox for their office. Okay. So again, I'm going to go through this one more time. You're helping a client. That client is, say, 19 years old. you go through it and you're like, I do not have the ability to do my social security account with this person. So you look at bullet 2 here, I'm helping someone. Then that individual is going to be sent to their address a paper copy of what you did online and the release, and they need to sign it, even if it's with the squiggle. Now look at bullet 4. The only people that can sign in the place of their child are legal guardians. And that is dicey because in terms of how many, some of your clients are going to have legal guardianship and some are not. You have the majority of your folks are not going to have a legal guardian. So we don't want parents to wait to file for legal guardianship because they may be on the fence if they should do legal guardianship or not. You're like, you don't have to do it. If you want to, that's fine. But you can't normally get that done until you're like 18, and it can take months. We never want them to wait. Okay. If they get legal guardianship, then they can send us in the papers afterwards. But even if that child is nonverbal and a squiggle, parents can help them. The kid signs it, get a witness, send it in. Now, the tough part is if you don't have guardianship and your child is nonverbal, we're not going to give you updated info on the phone unless you're a guardian. Okay. Or of course a payee if they're already on payment. But so I'll just say parents are going through the process and they'll be like, I need an update. And we're like, well, then you have to sign that adult has to sign. It's a child. For all of us, are always our children, but they have to sign the 3288 form. And you can upload this in your My Social Security account or drop it off. And even if that adult signs with a squiggle, they need to sign this if parents are asking for updates, or we're not going to give them updates unless that person will verbally on the phone, attest to who they are. If they're nonverbal, then they need that form signed with the squiggle and a witness, and then we can give them updates. Okay. Now, a person can always appoint a representative. And we usually tend to think of attorneys as doing the representation with us. That's a different form. That's a 1696, where it asks if you're charging a fee for representation and all kinds of stuff. And normally that's not going to be our families. But some of you may work with attorneys, or you may be representatives within your entity. That's a different process, okay? And again, requires a whole different set of paperwork. Parents usually just need that 3288 consent form to get updates. So once we get the applications, remember one big application, basically SSD, SSI, and by the way, also looking to make sure there's not a disabled adult child benefit. That application also covers where we're going to screen for any potential deceased parents, parents on retirement, parents on SSD. We're going to look at all that. Okay, with the application. And then in Ohio, this is where we're coming back full circle, because I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of you go by the acronyms of DDS for Developmental Disability Services. Well, we also have a DDS. That's, for in our lingo, the Disability Determination Services Bureau in Columbus. Each state has a DDS that actually makes the disability decision. Now, ours at Ohio is under OOD, Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. In some states, it's more under like their JFS umbrella. In Ohio, ours is under OOD. So again, we contract, these are folks making a federal Social Security disability determination. But we contract out with each state because states have different privacy laws, different pay scales for like getting medical records, things like that. All right. So, and ours is in Columbus for Ohio. And then someone from that disability determination service may contact you because we want to contact county boards, because a lot of you are offering therapy. You have information on the client, you have information on their functioning, etc. And look at our third bullet point. That client may or may not have to attend a Social Security consultative exam. Now, sometimes folks will just get prepared for this. They're like, everybody sees a Social Security doctor. That's not the case. Sometimes if we don't have insufficient evidence, especially for some of your young adults where they're like, well, my child has these, he's got depression, but we're like, we don't have anything on that. We have stuff about spectrum disorder, but we don't have anything about depression. So there may be a consultative exam in there because it's like, we don't really have evidence and we need some more. Okay. So it's very important, if a parent is asked for their child to go to that consultative exam, they just want to take it really seriously. They don't want to no-show. They want to make sure they follow through as part of the process, because what we're saying is we don't have enough. You need to show up to that. Okay. Now look at our final note here at the bottom, you guys. In terms of this disability determination, we are not going to make a medical determination unless the person meets our basic Social Security eligibility. Okay. So Kelly and I wanted to throw this out to you guys because we have had folks from our county board say, hey, we have this 16-year-old and he's living with his parents, and his parents make a very good living. We know that with mom and dad income, he doesn't qualify for SSI. And, you know, there's no SSD yet because this kid's not working, or maybe, you know, hasn't worked yet or anything. But can you guys just make a medical decision on him anyways? Just so the parents would like that? No. They have to qualify potentially for need-based SSI and or SSD based on work, or disabled adult child benefits based on mom or dad's work, in order for us to make a decision. If there is no potential for any of those, we will not make the medical decision. Okay. Now, we use something called the impairment code system in order to determine what body system that person may have an impairment with. So this is not the Colonel's secret recipe. This is in what we call our blue book, our disability blue book. And it used to be published, but now it's all online. And it goes into very specifics, including spectrum disorder, including various cognitive and impairments, etc. So you guys can dig into this with your links. Okay, here, if you meet this criteria in the blue book, boom, you are automatically approved. But look at the very bottom bullet here. Some of your folks aren't going to fit into these neat criteria. I've looked at these with some of you, and the impairment listing, like for an intellectual, like IQ, is so super low. I mean, the majority of your clients are not going to be at that level. They have maybe serious cognitive functioning, but not at this ridiculously low level, right? Or they may have some spectrum disorder, but they don't fit neatly into these impairment listings. That's okay. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be approved. It just means we're going to be needing more evidence. That may be coming from you or from school or from a psychiatrist to tell us about their ability to work. All right, if they're an adult, or of course their severity of functioning if a child. Okay. So this whole process, you guys, can take up to 6 months on average. Okay. And a lot of our folks, if you can get that child, that adult on my Social Security account, it's awesome because it updates every single night. So you can see online, if a medical determination is made, the letter that notifies you is going to be online. All right. And you can actually see that in your My Social Security account. Again, every single night, things, you could track it, where it's at, if it's in Columbus, etc. And it tracks, and we can look at information for you, right? If it's denied, you have an explanation why. Usually for an adult, it's going to be because we think you couldn't work. And then we go over that you have 60 days to appeal if you disagree with that determination. You could do it online, call us, we can get that appeal rolling. Okay, so our final thoughts here, you guys. What if it's approved? Let's not think now, because it's really important to tell parents not to blow off this process. Because a lot of parents will say to us, I've heard everybody has to go through this process 2 or 3 times. So I'm like not putting my heart and soul in it because, well, you know, whatever. It's like, they're going to be denied for sure. That's not true, you guys. 40% of our cases in Ohio are approved round 1. Okay. So you don't want parents blowing this off. We want them to take this very seriously because the majority are denied, but there's a lot of your cases that are going to be approved first round, aren't they? Now for SSI, before a payment is issued, we're going to contact that person from our local office, and we are going to verify their income and their resources and all that living arrangement stuff that Kelly talked about. We're also going to go over if we need a payee. We're going to go through that whole situation. Okay. And then if that person is approved, again, we got to verify income. If they're working, got to verify pay stubs, etc. Okay. If once that person's put into payment, they will automatically get JFS Medicaid aid. So think of aid goes with need-based SSI. And as Kelly said earlier, their benefits come in the first of the month. Okay, SSD and disabled adult child benefits are both under that SSD bubble. Remember, not based on need. So we don't have to go back and verify if you're any other, obviously if you're working, we may have to look at that. but I don't care if they have money in the bank account. I don't care where they're living. It's like, here is your benefit based on your work or based on a parent's work. All right. So it's like retirement. We don't care if they have other income, etc. And SSD and disabled adult child benefits are going to be on the 3rd of the month normally, or on a Wednesday, and they're automatically going to lead to Medicare, like retirement. The red, white, and blue Medicare card, 2 years automatically after benefits stop. Okay, so the big question that a lot of your parents will have, can my kid get both? How do you get both SSD and SSI? Okay, we want to go back to where Kelly was saying, like, we look at other income. So pretend your client Ryan has no income, no other income, just he's going to get SSD, SSI, that's it. All right. Think of the name, supplemental security income. SSI, that's what it stands for. It supplements other income, including SSD, up to that federal max. This year it's $994. Plus there's a crazy $20 disregard. So our Teresa Kelly brains like to think of this as SSI $994 plus 20. SSI supplements up to $1,014 this year. So it fills the gap. Once other income, including SSD or disabled adult child benefits, are above that limit, $994 plus 20 is $1,014. There's no more SSI. So let's do some quick examples. Okay, Ryan gets $600 in his own SSD, no other income. Okay, if he meets all other factors, the two together are going to be $1,014. So 600 SSD, 414 SSI, $1,014. But then let's say that his mother, become disabled or whatever, and he gets $1,400 a month off me. Okay, and a disabled adult child, or he gets $1,400 on his SSD. He's above SSI limit, isn't he, you guys? There would be no SSI payable. Now, there's this 5-month wait period with SSD. So sometimes people start off on, maybe get a little SSI, and if their SSD is over the SSI amount, their SSI would stop and SSD would continue. But I'm telling you, it's very possible, again, that somebody could get both if their other income, their SSD or disabled adult child benefits are below the $114 a month this year. And then it's possible some people get both Medicaid and Medicare together. That's possible, because once you're on 24 months on your own record or on a parent's record, right, you would go on Medicare. The base is A and B, but then Medicaid also slips in there sometimes from the job and family. So it's no wonder we all get confused with all these, right? All right, so we're going to wind up here, you guys. We're not talking payee today, and we're not talking work. This was our kind of mishmash of the basics but we want you to understand, again, with us, a lot of your clients, if they have cognitive impairments, they will need a payee into adulthood. Now, most folks, again, we always prefer direct payment. We assume direct payment. But if a disability condition comes back with a mental incapability determination from Columbus, we are normally going to need a payee. Okay. Everybody will get a medical review also at some point, whether they're SSI or SSDI, even our folks with permanent cognitive disabilities. So sometimes parents will freak out, and you can't blame them, because they get a packet in the mail that says, we are doing a medical review. This happened to my own brother-in-law. My nephew, Ryan, who I use as my example, was 32 years old when he had his first, and he'd been getting SSI and SSD on his own. And he was like, my brother-in-law almost fainted. He was like, I have to do a review or they're going to stop it. They're going to stop his benefits. I'm like, no, this is normal. This is normal. You just have to fill out the information so that we can update things. Okay, so tell parents medical reviews are normal. Do not ignore, fill it out. All right, it's part of the process. And again, we're not talking work. That's hopefully you'll have us back. Fear Factor will have us back, I hope, for another session. Lean on your experts too within your county boards. You have some amazing benefits experts that know stuff about work and disability. There's work supports and different rules, though, different rules. SSI, every single month, work has to be reported. SSD, you have a trial period, and then a 3-year extended period of eligibility. That's all about if you're making substantial earnings or not. The bottom line is disability is about work for our adults, you guys. And I want you to tell your families, we don't want them to be afraid. We don't want families afraid, but we do want families to realize it's serious. You have to report work to us. I don't care if it's SSI or SSDI. So we say if there's changes in work activity or that individual starts work, have them call. All right. Have them call us, talk to somebody. That way they can document that they've talked to someone. And then Kelly and I's rule is we say, save the pay stubs. I tell parents, I don't care if we're not reviewing work right now. This is when I want you to be a little hoarder. I want you to be a hoarder. And I'm like, save their pay stubs or their electronic pay records, just so you have those for a future work review for SSD. SSI, those need to be submitted every single month. Okay. So again, that's kind of more for another discussion. I know I've had our folks fast and furiously looking at questions and Q&A here in the background, but before we are forced to part ways, Lisa, let me bring Kelly back on just to say if we got any final parting words, and then Lisa, I'll let you wrap up for us also.
Any parting words? There was one question I think had to do with if somebody was denied at age 18, they filed an appeal. Should they reapply? When is the right time to reapply? Yes, somebody can apply as many times as they want to. If they apply and they're denied and they appeal, they have additional appeal options as well. But you have time limits to how long you can appeal decisions unless you have good cause reasons to let us extend those. Otherwise, somebody can just simply reapply. So I think the rest of the questions all made it into Q&A. Hopefully everybody had a chance to take a look at those. There were quite a few questions about people that have tried to sign into the login.gov and therefore then get onto my SSA accounts. Let me try and give you a 20-second synopsis. Social Security contracts with login.gov and ID.me. These are credentialing services. Somebody has to create a credential with login.gov or ID.me before they can sign into a My Social Security account. Whatever credential they create through login or ID.me is what is used as their password to get into the My Social Security account. However, we are not login.gov and we are not ID.me, so we cannot help people create those accounts if they're having difficulty. We always will have to just refer people back to login.gov or ID.me so that they can figure out what's going wrong. Why can't they get digitally identified in order to get that credential to sign into My Social Security? Maybe one day that changes in the future and we are able to help a little bit more, but right now we are not. So we just have to ask people to go back and try again. If you can't get on a login.gov account, then try the ID.me or vice versa and see if you can get one or the other. But you'll have to have one of those in order to sign into My SSA. And I know that went longer than 20 seconds.
Wow, you guys are amazing. And thanks to Brandon and Aaron who are on the call, because you guys have just been answering these questions